Greetings and welcome to our dear viewers. In the words of Brian Herbert, the capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice. And today, we have all made this choice of learning new things. We are learning, we are unlearning, we are relearning new paradigms, new strategies, and that's how we are today for the show. Today, our show focuses on teacher education practices across boundaries. And we have amidst us a very dynamic person, Dr. Matthew A. Witenstein. Hi, Matthew. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Rennie. How are you?
I am fine. A very early morning to you, Matthew. I'm so sorry that I think I suppose it's like 4 a.m. in U.S. right now, and you're up for a show. That really shows your passion and your the kind of zeal that you have to share your thoughts on this topic. Thank you so much for being with us, Matthew. So let me introduce Matthew. It's almost a year that we have been known to each other, and Matthew is the assistant professor, and he's completed his doctoral studies, and he's an assistant professor at working in the Department of Education, Administration School of Education and Health Sciences, University of Dayton. Hi, Matthew. So how do you feel, and how is the lockdown going on with you?
Well, it's a pleasure to see you again, Rennie.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
and it's such a trying time, isn't it? And in one
True,
of immense adaptation
true.
as we consider generally what are some of the next steps that we'll take as educationists? How do we support communities and students?
True.
It's an interesting time.
Yes, very true. So, Matthew, we would like to introduce your work and your area of expertise.
Sure. So in the U.S., my work typically focuses on immigrants in education, particularly in post-secondary education. Um, and I also study international education experiences. But a lot of the work that I engage with as it relates to you and in South Asia looks at higher education quality, higher education organization and governance issues. And a lot of that work is done in South Asia and in particular in India. So I'm also the co-editor. I don't know if you've had a chance to read this Palgrave Macmillan book series with a group of my colleagues on South Asian education policy, research and practice. And we had a book come out last year called Teaching and Teacher Education, South Asian Perspective. And I'd be happy to share pieces of that with you in the future. So a lot of my current work in India focuses on participatory methods, which I think are really critical right now during this COVID-19 time. And I'm really interested in engaging with bottom-up theory frameworks to better understand adapting policies and practices to improve things in education, like quality and
Yeah. So I remember the bottom-up top approach that you were mentioning, and that's how we got connected. And you were in our institution, and you had a series of talks with our students, our teachers, and I suppose at that time you were across the country in India. You visited a couple of parts, and that was a real good way you could move on and work and get along. So Matthew, your role, what do you feel about the evolving role of teacher education in the United States?
Now, it's a really interesting question that you pose, and it's a really, as we talked about a few minutes ago, just a really adaptive and interesting time right now, particularly during this pandemic. The United States is a very decentralized education system, so as that we have here, and so with the pandemic, it's been quite challenging for teachers and for educational systems. So one of the things I have here is I always think of teacher education as one of those important nexus points for understanding an entire society. So as we think about this challenging time that we have right now, how is teacher education being centered? How is it being adaptive? I'm really curious for the rest of the summer and for the fall semester, what types of observations that teacher trainees will be able to perform. You and I were even just talking a bit about this prior to joining the live session here. So typically students in our country perform a semester of what they call student teaching before going out and graduating. And so with the pandemic, it'll be interesting to see how school systems work with teacher trainee programs to adapt student teaching. Like, what will that look like? You know, new teachers may be needed in the next academic year. It'll be really interesting to see how local education systems adapt, particularly if a lot of it has to be online, for the need of new teachers or even for retaining the teachers they already have. But the question is, how will that happen? What will that look like? So I'm always interested in what types of adaptive frameworks will teacher trainees be taught in their programs to support students' needs in future crises like this type of a pandemic. You know, it's so interesting in the United States because often occurrences like hurricanes or earthquakes or other big crises may not impact the U.S. often in the way that it impacts developing countries because of the types of structures that we have. But this type of a pandemic is very different because it goes across all types of borders. I'll add one more thing, Rennie, before you may have other thoughts. U.S. schools are incredibly diverse, and our teacher corps is made up of predominantly white women, which is really interesting. So, particularly with the diversity of our students, there's a variety of important issues to consider, like students' internet connectivity, even food available at home. I'm not sure that folks often think about this as in terms of the United States, but we have lots of folks that have food insecurity, ability for parents to help students with homework and provide spaces to do their work. So as I taught a curriculum class to our master's students a few semesters ago, I tried to challenge them with a variety of equity-oriented theoretical frameworks to better adapt PK-12 curriculum. And considering how we are training our teachers going forward is really critical.
Yeah, that's very true. Matthew, I would like to share here. If you look into the teacher education, that right now what we have, our students are in their second year, and this is their third semester that they are entering to. And in this period, they are supposed to do 11 weeks of internship, that is in schools. So with this pandemic, with the kind of social distancing and the lockdown, and the schools not reopening at the near future very soon, we see that the students are going to have an extended structure of the semester will be extended, and at this time to help them to understand, to take up online teaching, to teach them, and the schools, they will not be able to go to the practice lessons. I'm wondering how we really help our students grapple with the situation right now. Apart from that, the teachers who are in school had an issue with using technology. We are not used to using technology so much, but now it's all online learning. The teachers also had to be trained so much. So there were a couple of teachers that were trained over the last 3-4 weeks, where are almost around 45, 50,000 teachers are being trained on using Google Classroom, Google Meet, and various apps on Google. So these are the structures that we have to Yeah. Uh, these are the structures that we have been seeing, and we really need to fight the situation, come up, and there are a lot of challenges, as you're talking about the challenges of seeing the situation among our students also. Many of our students do not have the capacity or the ability to have a smartphone or even a laptop at home. So how are they going to do online learning? So all these are few challenges which we never expected, and now we are in a process of trying to combat this situation and bounce back. And there are measures that are being taken in this regard, and the government is really taking a lot of efforts to try and come back to a very synchronized way we are have going in. I think we are having a little bit of issues, Matthew, because it's really raining hard here, and I suppose maybe we may have few fluctuations in our internet connectivity. So, so I do echo your thoughts also, and I understand how both of us living in different parts of the world, but still there are challenges in coping up this current situation that we are going through. So, Matthew, over to you. The next. So, your experience in India, focusing on your teacher education perspective.
Yes. Rennie, you're frozen there for a second. Oh, there you go. So,
Yeah. So, can I? Yeah, I'll repeat. Yeah, your.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm here. Uh, yeah. So, your experience in India, you have been here a couple of times, and what do you have to say about that?
yeah. I've had the good fortune of, gosh, I don't even know how many times I've been to India.
Yeah.
Probably a couple of months a year for the last 10 years or so. I have had some rich experiences,
Yeah.
spending time, and you know, I wouldn't keep coming back if I didn't have such a passion for this particular work, particularly as it relates to educational quality. And a lot of that has been spent on teacher education. And as I had mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, I often see teacher education as the next as one of the most important nexus points for understanding an entire society. What do we teach the teachers that go out and teach all the children that become all the different types of people they become in the world? So one of the things I'm really
Yeah.
focused on,
Yeah.
as
That's right.
we had chatted about when I saw you, is working on bottom up policy development and understanding the role teachers and teacher trainee programs play in helping develop curriculum and exams. So over the years, working with faculty members in teacher trainee programs, while some seem to be complacent and okay with the current position and role, many want more say and ownership in the curriculum, more creativity and freedom.
Yes. Okay.
And I'm sure that you've also noticed that a lot of folks, at least, have mentioned to me that having less theory and more practice would be wonderful. And so those are some of the initial thoughts that I had with thinking about teacher education. Um, let's see, what else? It's really,
Yeah.
you're back, Rennie.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm really sorry
Just,
about the same. Yeah.
oh, that's okay. I see that, especially, it's very interesting to think about the very formally trained people at the bottom of the bureaucracy, which teachers often happen to be some of those types of people. And when we think about teacher training and teacher education, folks are often going out into communities. And so when I think about people as teachers, and even those that are the trainers of of future teachers, it's really important to be very engaged with the community. This becomes very difficult at times because faculty at teacher training institutions already have so much in terms of the tasks they already have. But one of my big questions is, if folks aren't really engaged with the community, how do they even know what's important, what people value in their communities, to bring into the classroom so that we can help support students and their families and their communities to the best of our abilities as teachers?
So I really feel the bridging of the gap is very important, and that's when your paper as well as your thoughts and your work with the bottom top approach really takes about thinking that, okay, you need to go to the grassroots level and then look up how it really emerges into a system where there's a connect with the society. As you rightly said, you need to build that connect. If you're not going to be connected, the people who are going to benefit are not going to be considered, then the work things does just falls off like a pack of cards. Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm sure your study focuses more on that as well, and your experiences in India that you have taken up and helped you to write the paper. I'm sure you would have really had a wonderful time in penning down these thoughts and your experiences. So moving from there, if you look at this period of pandemic, so how do you think, and what are some of the suggestions that you could offer during this period of pandemic? Any reforms that you could suggest? And
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the thoughts that I didn't write down that I'm thinking of right now is really taking care of yourself, taking
Yeah.
care of your family, obviously too. But
Oh,
if if we're not ready to go, mentally, physically, and all of that kind of
yeah.
stuff to support students, then it'd be really difficult to do it. I know it sounds so simple, but truly taking care of ourselves during such a difficult time is really important. Um, and thinking a little bit more broadly in terms of teacher education and teacher training, providing adaptable theoretical frameworks for folks. So to me, theory is really important. Obviously, practice even more important. But those adaptable frameworks can really help guide the practice that we do, and really help us, especially during a time like now. So I really appreciate adaptive types of frameworks on a regular time, not even during a pandemic time,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it really help us adapt to very diverse students and diverse colleagues, a diverse culture. So I was meeting with a student yesterday actually about an action research project with small independent schools in the US.
Mhm.
And he's a principal of a small independent school. And so it's a private school. So many schools are worried about their survival.
Sure.
And some of the things we were talking about are like, what pre-planning are they doing to support their schools and communities and students? My thought is that this is not the last time that we'll have such a global type of a pandemic. Um, we, as the world continues to globalize, we continue to raise, forests, and as we continue to build in areas that have not necessarily been built before, there are going to be viruses and things that we're going to engage with that are then going to globalize again. And we have to be ready for these types of things. And so we need to think about pre-planning. So how can some of these, one of the things we were talking about was, how do we actually work even across schools? How can these small independent schools work together? And it doesn't have to be small independent schools, but this was just our particular conversation. How are schools and communities working with the local communities, but how are even neighboring schools working together to help each other think about planning? One of the things I like to really use are case studies. Hopefully, with as times improve, we can think about developing case studies of things that actually happened and practice through those, so that when these things happen again in the future, we actually have plans going forward. So also, I find it really interesting, and I don't know about your institution, Rennie, but our institution, my university, has multiple plans going forward, depending upon what the fall will be like. Also, talking to the community and particularly to parents, having town hall meetings. Eh, If we don't know what families need, how are we supposed to know how to best support these children, right? So being in tune with one's community and understanding the best opportunities for continuing kids learning and supporting families' needs is, I think, is really key right now. Since the world continues to globalize, these types of events are probably going to happen again. And it's interesting because it's one thing about continuing children's actual learning in that formal context. But at the same time, my guess is that many parents that I know talk about how it's exhausting to consider, even if families do have an internet connection and are able to provide children with opportunities to have formal learning. I think it's really important for teachers to consider just what do children need, what are families needing in the communities that we have, even beyond just formal learning.
Yeah, that's very true because today we are learning on life skills. Today we are learning how to live with this pandemic, and as you said, this is just one. We may be preparing ourselves to many for many to come along, and at that time, the survival skills, the life skill is something that really we need to imbibe, and that can only happen when the teachers take the onus of not only teaching the children but also impacting the society through their the way they interact with their students, and that's how the learning spreads. As you rightly said about your the action research that you mentioned about, we I was also a part of a small NLP program here where the schools used to support each other. So there were 5 schools that were put together, and it consisted of the government schools, the aided, the private schools, and they all would work together. And there were around 100 schools in Mumbai that were joined in this NLP program, and it was taken up in a very positive manner. And it was, like, hand holding, and such practices will really help us to move further and take up good practices, and reach the community in the best possible manner. Yes, so Matthew, what would be your concluding remarks for us as you are here and you would give your views? Could you just sign off with your concluding remarks?
Sure. Well, I will say that I very much look forward as the pandemic hopefully winds down at some point and coming back and engaging with you. This summer, I don't know if I'll be able to come back to India to do some of the work that I'd like to follow up on, but I very much look forward to. But just in some concluding remarks, being proactive is really, really key. Working with communities is really key, and engaging those at the bottom of the bureaucracy, like teachers, since they're engaged with communities to help make policy. As tough of a time it is with this pandemic, perhaps this is an opportunity for us in thinking about teacher training to readapt the ways in which we work more closely with parents, with families, to really understand the needs of their children and of them. And finally, I'll say making policy adaptable, particularly to support crisis moments. Maybe our societies will take this moment, and hopefully I pray that it's a moment, to think about the ways in which policy are made and to make them more practical and adaptable so that we are not stunned at the moment of a pandemic, and that we can be more adaptable within that moment so that we have the best opportunity to support our social, educational, and communal needs.
Yeah, that's really, as you said, we just pray and hope that it's just a moment and it will pass by very soon. But this passing will make us all very strong. We are now going to, we have faced, it could be like we have faced the maximum, and now we are quite strong enough to face it further. So I really feel that this moment will pass away soon, and we really hope that it's the best period in future that comes on for all of us, and we look forward for a wonderful learning. So as we were mentioning before we went on live, so you had an intent of coming back, so you could just share about it, Matthew.
Yeah, so I have a number of projects going on in South Asia as usual, and this summer, one of my main research partners, Radhika Iyengar, who's at the Earth Institute at Columbia University,
Mm-hmm.
Radhika's originally from Bhopal, and her
Okay.
and I have been working on a project looking at technical TVET, technical
Mm-hmm.
and vocational education
It
training,
would. Yes. Yes.
particularly as it relates to women, and thinking about bottom-up policy of how women choose to access TVET,
Mm-hmm.
how they aspire to connect with it if they do, and what the types of programs should be, because often women are not asked.
Yes.
The last 5-year
True.
plan from the government
Yes. Yes.
really is compelled for more women to be engaged, but
Being
they
good.
don't
Yes.
actually talk with
Yeah.
folks about what they would like. So really a lot of my work in India,
Welcome.
whether it's in teacher training, whether it's in looking at post-secondary education systems,
Yeah.
particularly
Mm-hmm.
affiliated colleges in general, or with TVT, really is looking at figuring out that meeting place between the bottom and the top,
So,
and how we bring policy, how we bridge that policy. And so that's
policy.
what I'm hoping to work on this summer, or maybe early in the fall, depending on where the
Yeah.
pandemic is.
Yes. And your intent to come back to our classrooms?
Would
Your,
love to do that.
yeah.
I really look forward to working with your college, and with
Yeah.
you, Principal Francis,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
we
Surely.
look at more adaptable ways
Yes.
to work with teachers and communities.
True. Yeah, we'll be all the more happy, Matthew, because it's really a great opportunity. And since a year that we have known each other, it's really great that we have been able to connect, and we have been able to move forward and take up this talk even today. And as we shared that, we'll be surely inviting you to our classrooms, our Google classrooms, and you can be a part of it, and you can see
Ooh,
how you can see how our learning happens today, and how we are trying to meet this particular challenging situation. So thank you once again, Matthew, for being on our show. It's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure because you have woken up so early and you're with us. Thank you once again, and we hope to connect with you in all our future endeavors. Thank you once again. Take care, and have a nice day ahead. Take care.
thanks, Rennie.
Thank you.